Morant with a running start. Elevate! Oh, it dunks! Oh, my goodness! Tie game in overtime. Gasol will turn. His heat is gone! Memphis on top. 7-10 remaining. Conley now with three. Count it! A 15-point lead for Memphis. And Blake Griffin gets into it on the floor with Randolph. Hard to tell if there are any punches being thrown under there, but Griffin took acceptance. Adams going long. Morant! He hit it! John Morant, insanity!
You gotta be kidding me.
Welcome to Grits and Grinds, a Memphis Grizzlies podcast. My name is Keith Parrish, and on today's episode, I'm joined again by Shawn Coleman. Shawn, how's it going, buddy?
Doing all right, Keith. We were talking before the show started. I know that glad you're doing better, trying to get better on my end, but it's that time of year, so it happens. But always a pleasure to be with you, Keith. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, so you have a Braves podcast. You participated in a Braves podcast. Are there eerie similarities with the horribleness of the Braves season? I don't follow baseball at all, but my understanding is maybe the Braves' best player tore his ACL. You, of course, had to deal with an entire Grizzlies season where the Grizzlies got jamorant for 9 games. Are there too many similarities for comfort?
Absolutely. The Ronald Acuna Jr., for those who listened and loved baseball, last year's MVP, just one of the most dynamic players we've seen in a while. 2021, tore one of his ACLs. We won the World Series. That's great. So now we've decided to test fate twice. Unfortunately, over the past weekend, he tore his other ACL. And the thing, is that if you were to compare a player who just is excited, athletic, just can do anything and everything on the baseball field like Ja Morant can do with the basketball, it would be Ronald Acuna Jr. They may be at different statuses in their respective sports, but to make a long story short, I'm tired of the teams that I love and cover going through all these injuries. I'm ready for us to get a good stretch of health and hopefully see some championships won.
Yeah, I sometimes am curious about what feels like I don't know what the right word is, like a theme of similarity between sports things. Like there's no connection between the Grizzlies and the Braves other than you and probably other sports fans in the South. It makes sense that you would cheer for Atlanta baseball and Grizzlies basketball. That's fine. But then I think sometimes about like Tennessee sports.
Yeah.
And I'm watching Tennessee sports and I'm like, wow. So like the Titans, just an embarrassing offense, just can't score. What a humiliating game I just watched. And then like the Grizzlies, you're just like, what a humiliating offense. I can't believe the thing. And then like Nashville soccer, I'm like, what a humiliating offense. I can't believe I watched another 0-0. And of course the Grizzlies spiked and were awesome, for a couple of years, and theirs was all injuries. But there's times where I'm just like, why do all the Tennessee sports teams have terrible offenses? I don't get it. But maybe it's just random. Maybe, I don't know. They have coordinated their colors at least. And I feel like there's a push from Memphis fans to go back to the city jerseys from 2 years ago, the navy blue ones, the awesome ones. It was the awesome year. They all the Grizzlies players wore those yellow leg sleeves, the navy blue jerseys. They're so much better than our Grizzlies regular jerseys. And there's a push to be like, hey, those are better. Let's do that. And I agree, but I'm worried some of the hardcore Memphis fans, some of the Memphis fans who are maybe not as positive towards fans in other cities, when you realize it's the same color scheme of the Predators and Nashville soccer, maybe that would be the slowdown. Maybe that'd be the pullback. Like, wait a minute, we want to still be distinct. Grizzlies distinct.
I just, like I say, and the Braves are right there, they're offensive to watch at times because of their offense here recently. So I don't know if it's the jerseys. I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's the respective sports gods that we need to talk with and, say the right things too. Health just needs to be in better situation, and hopefully it will be here soon. So
yeah, hopefully it's all health related and it's not like, hey, look at the Titans skill position players. And now Will Levis. You're like, oh, goodness. Anyways, let's talk basketball.
Sure.
We're recording this in the midst of a very competitive, I don't know, 3-1 Western Conference Finals right now. The Mavericks up 3-1 on the Timberwolves. The Celtics have already advanced to the finals, awaiting the winner of that Western Conference series. When you watch these playoffs, Shawn, and you see what the finals is going to be, either Celtics Mavs or Celtics Wolves, are there any takeaways that you have from these playoffs and how they apply to the Grizzlies?
Yeah. The offensive efficiency that you got to be able to have to be able to survive and advance in the playoffs. The Grizzlies have a lot of work to do to be able to get there. I think when you look at the correlation between, the four teams in the conference finals, and I look at the conference finals as the Grizzlies, ultimate goal to get there. Because I think, listen, luck's going to have to be there for the Grizzlies to ultimately get there. I think you mentioned on a podcast, a few weeks ago or a few podcasts ago, for the Grizzlies to ultimately just have a really good shot at being a true championship contender, Gigi is going to have to become, that, significant level of player, that fourth best player. The ninth pick that we get this year going to have to be that. But, last year it was revealed that, the NBA champion has, been top 6 in effective field goal percentage for 13 straight years. Well, Boston's 1, Indiana's 2, Dallas is 7, Minnesota's 10. Minnesota was able to beat Denver because they had enough defense. Their defense was structured enough to limit Jokic enough, but also defend the 3 from Denver enough to be able to get the job done. But now they're facing a Mavericks team who just has enough jump shooting to be able to, go over the size and length of the Timberwolves. So what stands out to me, especially when it comes to the ability to consistently make the right 3 at the right spot, the Grizzlies have a long way to go. Can they get there? Time remains to be seen. I don't see it being done in one offseason. I can see us getting closer to that. But the Grizzlies have a long way to go when it comes to their offensive efficiency, especially from 3.
You say one off season. Would this not be our third off season of specifically addressing shooting and half court offense? I mean, that's been the deal. I mean, also we can talk about it in a second. I mean, they specifically let Kyle Anderson walk because they thought that was not the right type of player that you could have for playoff success. Meanwhile, Kyle Anderson's making impact plays while playing small forward, Shawn.
Yeah.
He's playing small forward, a non-shooting small forward, making some impact plays for the Timberwolves. It's okay. I'm not too hurt about it. But they have specifically spent the last 2 off seasons being like, we have to fix our half-court offense. We have to fix our shooting. And the jury's out from last year because the team was never healthy. And so you're like, all right, fine. I think they finished 29th in 3-point percentage. I believe the Trailblazers slid beneath them right at the finish line, but they were awful. And of course had the worst offense in the NBA last year as they used the most players in NBA history. But still, I would at least say, hey, we've hopefully had several seasons to build up our offense. So maybe next year, maybe there's just some tweaks, a twist here, a turn there, and they can get there. But I don't know. The way you set it up made you feel like, no, we're still as far as ever from being a top 15, top 10 offense.
Well, and you hope that, the reps that were there for Vince and Gigi, from this past season definitely could help out, especially on that corner 3 opportunity. Could the Grizzlies, have someone catch fire from the quarter 3-point spot like PJ Washington did against OKC, in the Dallas OKC matchup? You would love to see it. So all those threes that were shot this season, I didn't mind it too much just because it was reps. You gave reps to your depth when you weren't trying to win. But yes, I know I'm a strong advocate for Luke Kennard. It's not because I think that Luke Kennard is going to be a conference finals MVP. It's just that our team with the Luke Kennard is at least closer to where we need to be than without Luke Kennard. But even with him, we're still not where we need to be. So that depth is going to have to show up. And I think when they're talking about philosophical changes, it's putting players in the right spot. But it's also about being able to make shots. These teams are also very efficient at the rim. And of course, Keith, as we talk about, the Grizzlies, when they're healthy, the Brandon Clark, jamorant, Desmond Bane, Jaren Jackson Jr., those will help out at the rim. But their 2-point offense, we were bottom 3 in the league as well. So health is definitely going to be there, but there's going to have to be better positioning, better movement. There's going to have to be better strategy of putting our players in position to succeed efficiently.
So also when you look at the playoffs, have any of your opinions about rookies contributing. I feel like that's been some talk because of the Mavericks with Derek Lively. And of course, the Grizzlies hoping they're maybe nailing the draft pick away from being back into, the second round of the playoffs. When we think about, obviously, the Grizzlies' hole at center, you think, all right, maybe you could fill that in the draft. And then when you see the Mavs doing it, does that give you any optimism? Also, like some part of me initially, I was thinking about like, all right, we have to get a spacing big. I feel like a spacing big as far as someone who could actually stretch the court by shooting and not just by rebounding and screening. That might be important because of jamorant's shooting limitations. And what I see with the Timberwolves being able to play multiple non-shooters, like with a Gobert, and then you see the Mavs with non-shooters, I'm thinking, all right, well, maybe it could possibly work. But like, what are your thoughts on just the archetype of player the Grizzlies could even seek out based on the success some teams have had in the playoffs?
Yeah, Derek Lively has been a difference maker, and it's been really impressive to see. And Donovan Clingan is not as fluid. I think he doesn't have the fluidity that a Derek Lively does, in terms of his movement and things like that. I think that, Clingan is more of like a Rudy Gobert, though I'm not going to sit here and put that ceiling on him. I think that's a bit unfair. But someone like a Clingan, who's very good defensively, could be a rebounder, could be a screener. I think someone that could elevate the overall offensive efficiency of Ja Bain and Jaren. I think he stands out as someone that could, have a little bit of a role for 20 minutes maybe in playoff games, and not just rookies directly, but the type of players that have stood out. I think that something that stood out besides bigs maybe having a little bit more value than people thought in this playoffs is, guard lineups, 3-guard lineups. New York, Indiana, other teams have had success with these 3-guard lineups. A Reed Shepherd, I know that the Grizzlies having a Ja Reed Bade lineup would be very, very small. I get that, but that would be a very good offensive lineup as well due to efficiency, things such as that. I do think there are some rookies out there that could make sense. I think a Dalton Connect is someone that may be able to get hot and find a role off a bench. But it's about these win now players. And I think for the Grizzlies, these playoffs may show that, hey, maybe there's value in a win now player. Yeah, there may be higher upside players that are out there, but do we want to focus on players that can really help out offensively, really be efficient, and really help us out in our areas of need? So, I think that this shows that, either rookies themselves or a player archetype of a rookie that is available could show value maybe earlier than some expect.
Another question about the players we're seeing participate for the Celtics and the Mavericks and the Timberwolves. I feel like we're seeing specialists maybe played off the court, or at least I think of offensive specialists. I think of like a guy like Tim Hardaway Jr. He's not playing for the Mavericks because they're like, we just need guys who can play. And you look at the Timberwolves have shortened their rotation, and like they don't really have that like maybe shooting specialists on the team. But despite that, they're like, you know what? We just have to play our best players. And even the Celtics, like you saw in Game 4 against the Pacers, they played 5 guys basically. They're like, all right, Sam Hauser, yeah, we're gonna play our 5 guys for like 40 minutes. Like part of me is like, all right, if we think about the Grizzlies team, depth is important. I'm a huge proponent of depth. That I am, especially when you don't have a Tatum and a Jaylen Brown, especially when you don't have like the absolute elite. But I think you can look at the Timberwolves. I mean, I don't know where you put Anthony Edwards, league wide, but like he's probably not a top 10 player yet. Theirs is more about like just spreading the talent around. I think maybe their talent, when you look at it, like where would you rank Cat and Gobert and Anthony Edwards? I think that closely matches up to the Grizzlies, where you would rank Ja Morant and then Jaren Jackson Jr. and Desmond Bane. And so I think, all right, we can maybe spread it thin as far as like spread the talent out. But at some point, you got to be like, oh, we actually can't play Monty Morris, or we can't play any of these other guys. Like we're just going to play our 6, 7, 8 guys. And for me, that's where I'm like, all right, we don't actually need, when we talk about the roster, and I'm thinking about like Luke Kennard, and I'm even thinking about like beyond that, it's like, it doesn't actually matter because we have to upgrade someone in our top 6 right now, someone in our top 7. So like, I don't know, maybe that's the takeaway I'm having. I don't know if you feel similarly when you watch the playoffs.
Absolutely. I definitely think, Anthony Sane, mentioned it, and others have mentioned it, that you're not seeing specialists play as much now. But the thing that I'll say is this, is that I think that you also have to remember the context of the Grizzlies versus the context of these teams. The Grizzlies need a Luke Kennard type shooting specialist much more than these other teams do, because the Grizzlies don't have as much shooting depth. So I agree. I don't think that you play a Luke Kennard at 25 to 30 minutes. I think that it's the right usage of a Luke Kennard to maybe get him hot in the right situations or against the right lineups that would be very, very valuable to the Grizzlies. But to your point, the whole thing is that you just can't go out there and play 20 to 25 minutes of a player that can't contribute on both ends. You've got to be able to be very good at using them. And as much as I want to sit here and say, well, Luke Kennard can make a difference in the playoffs like he did for the Grizzlies in a positive way last year against the Lakers, it was his usage by Taylor Jenkins that was in question. So it's not just about Luke Kennard's contributions himself. It's also the question of, will Taylor Jenkins use him correctly? So those big questions right there once again show, I think, that the bridge is a bit longer than some may anticipate of what the Grizzlies have to cross to be able to get to true contention.
Yeah, one of the great unknowable questions for Grizzlies fans is, in retrospect, looking at that Lakers series and wondering, like, how much was Dillon Brooks taking off the table, and what if they'd had a little less Dillon, a little more Luke, if they'd gone more just straight offense in that situation, like what could have been. And then, of course, like all the cherry pick stats that I use and others use about how good the Grizzlies were with jamorant, Desmond Bane, and Luke Kennard on the court. You always have to have that like grain of salt. Like, yeah, but it was very small sample. We're talking like it was overwhelmingly one game, which really swings all that stuff. And anyways, that's another question. Let's talk about the Grizzlies draft pick. So we're coming up. The draft is a little bit under a month away. What are your current thoughts right now on how the Grizzlies should use that 9th pick?
Donovanclingan remains a focus of mine. I know that he is a non-shooting big, but I also think that with the cost control that you would have him with and what he could turn into, I think that he's someone that makes a lot of sense. I'm even to the point of myself being comfortable to where, giving up 939 Santi Aldama to move up potentially 2 or 3 spots to get Donovanclingan. I know if I'd put that on the board right from the beginning, but that's the extent to which I would, want to get Clingan. But if Clingan goes at I don't want to trade a future first or something like that for Donovanclingan. He goes 3, he goes 2, something like that. I don't really want to do that. Other players that I really like are Ron Holland, because I do like his upside. I think he's someone with Vince that if you bring him into the fold, that would then give you more reason to make Marcus Smart expendable. And I think that Ron Holland could give you another option for a player that could become that 4th best player with your core. And then 2 others, the Window players that I like are Reed Shepard as well as Dalton Connect down to Tennessee. Just 2 highly efficient offensive players. I know that the size is a bit of a concern with Reed Shepard, but I think he makes up for that with just the overall positive play that he adds. And I think the Dalton Connect would be some really good shooting depth that we need. It also would make, potentially both those would make Luke Kennard, expendable to go and get things. And then there's some trade back scenarios. And then, at the end of the day, those are players that I like that I would love to go get in this draft. If the Grizzlies want to use that 9th pick to go get like a Jarrett Allen or someone like that, but, hey, I'm all for them improving the team. I do want to use the pick, though, because I think adding that level of talent on another 4-year deal with Vince and Gigi to be a supporting cast for Ja Bane and Jared, that is ideal. But those are kind of some names that I think make sense so far as actual rookies in this draft go.
I want to ask you a question of something I was asking myself. A thing I do a lot on my solo podcasts is I was posing the question, what's a more likely way the Grizzlies win a title? If we ever win a title, what's more likely? Is it more likely that, one, it's because the player we take in this year's draft is a hit, becomes a plus starter level player or better? What are the odds of that occurring? Is it 10%? I don't know, 20%, who knows? Or lower. But is that more likely, or is trading that 9th pick for a 3rd or 4th best player, a starter level guy? Maybe it is Jarrett Allen. Maybe it is I don't know. I'm thinking of even worse starter level players. The guy who people criticize me for always mentioning is like Cam Johnson. That's your 4th best starter, or maybe 5th best starter. And then you add another starter with the 9th pick. I mean, even someone not as impressive, if you Wendell Carter Jr., okay? A very average NBA player, but an average NBA player who lifts you up from using a 10-day guy or a 2-way player. The difference between Trey Jemison and Wendell Carter Jr., the idea being, is it more likely you win a title because you hit a home run with the 9th pick, Or you trade for a starter or like a pretty good starter, and then the growth of Gigi and Vince plus Ja, Desmond, and Jaren, and even Marcus congealing, like that gets the Grizzlies to a title. Which one of those things do you think is most likely?
I think that the trade for the established NBA player gives them more of a chance to win a title. I think that hitting a home run with that ninth pick extends the window, and it's more of a win now versus.
Well, Shawn, if you've increased my odds of winning a title, why do I care? I mean, I guess I understand you don't want to be super short-sighted. I don't care about keeping my window open if I can maximize, I think, the next 3 years. 2 years?
Yeah.
I mean, Jaren's going to sign a $300 million contract with somebody in 3 years.
Yeah.
I mean, 2 years from now, right? 2 summers from now. So,
and I think what it is at the end of the day for the Grizzlies, what value does that ninth pick have? How much do they have to add to that ninth pick?
Very little.
Yeah. And so if you want to talk about a Marcus Smart, for instance, for me, if I'm sitting here talking about a Marcus Smart, the ninth pick for Jared Allen in a trade, I'm actually sitting here saying, okay, why don't I add a little bit more to that to see if I can make it Smart and 9 for Jared in 20, because then you get the impact player that you're looking at. But also, I think that you could go get like a Tristan Da Silva or somebody like that.
I like Tristan Da Silva, Shawn. He's my newest one.
Yeah, so you can still get the best of both worlds. You get the player who probably helps you win more now, plus also get that rookie contract. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think that if you're looking to, in a win now way, maximize your chances at the title, using that ninth pick as a catalyst to be able to get another win now rotation player you can trust in the playoffs, that's the best way to do it. I would much rather, though, be creative in doing that and still be able to keep a first round pick instead of just completely trading the ninth pick away.
So the Jared Allen idea. So I like, for me, 9 and Marcus Smart is intriguing. I think the problem the Grizzlies are going to run into, the problem our team is going to run into this summer, is there are other franchises who want to make trades who probably have more tradable stuff. And the Pelicans are probably going to go hard for Jared Allen or even Darius Garland. Like the Pelicans and Cavs, good chance they make a trade. The Rockets apparently have some interest in Jared Allen, which is, I think, very interesting. And like the Rockets could trade more stuff. The Jazz, they don't need Jared Allen probably, but like they've already said they want to trade 10 and 29 this year. They also have a bunch of future picks. Like they're going to be aggressive. So like, it's going to be hard for the Grizzlies to outbid some of these teams, even like the Thunder in a very unique position. I mean, it's painfully kind of similar to where the Grizzlies were 2 years ago. The Thunder have more future picks than the Grizzlies did 2 years ago, but a similar situation. The Thunder, they actually have cap space and they can trade for stuff. So it's going to be hard to track down these guys. If it's a Mikal Bridges, if it's a Jared Allen, that's going to be tough. But you would like Marcus Smart and 9, I think, is a fair offer for Jared Allen if the Cavs move on from either Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell. And then, like, would you also throw in a lottery protected another first? Because I feel like once you make that trade, it's kind of like, well, yeah, why not? But I don't know if that's too much. Are there other guys that you would make a similar type offer? I mean, the one that I only mentioned this last episode because there was like Pistons beat writers talking about it, like the Pistons drafting Klingan and like moving on from Jalen Duren. That's another one where 9 plus Marcus Smart plus lottery protected for Jalen Duren. Is that something that would interest you?
I would not trade all that for Jalen Duren. The reason why is because I think I think that Taylor Jenkins can get more out of Jalen Duren defensively, but Jalen Duren to me doesn't add all the elements that, like, I wouldn't trade that, for that type of player who you still had to develop that much. Listen, I look at pick 18, pick 20, and pick 25 in the draft. That's, I believe, the Pelicans, that is the Magic, that is the Cavs, and that is the Wizards. And I would use 9 plus whatever money matching extra picks it took to either go to Orlando and say, hey, 9 plus Kennard for Wendell Carter Jr. in 18, for instance. That gives them, gets them up to potentially get their point guard. 9 and 20, or 20 would obviously be Jared Allen, Marcus Smart 9, Jared Allen and 20, throw in whatever there. And then the player who I consistently feel would maximize a Jared at the 5 lineup that to me could be realistic to go get is Diddy Avdia. Like I would do a 9 and whatever it would take to a 9, for instance, 9 and Luke plus extra picks to go get Diddy Avdia in 25, for instance. Those are some trade scenarios that I think happen. I don't think any of them are likely, but those are the type of scenarios where you get a win down player that you need, plus you get that first round pick, and so you're maximizing value in one single move.
So I'm a skeptic that the Wizards would trade Deni Avdia just because his contract is so cheap.
Agreed.
And they hit on him with the 9th pick, several years ago. I think it's going to take a lot more to get Avdia. The one guy who I think maybe I brushed aside too quickly last episode was Kyle Kuzma.
Yeah.
Kuzma's salary, it's not that much, but he does have a 15% trade kicker. So that kind of takes it where it gets a little bit uncomfortable as far as the Grizzlies situation with the luxury tax. Like Kuzma, it makes some sense alongside Jaren. He's not a plus defender, but he's like a modestly okay rebounder, which is the thing I look at. But he can create his own shot, desperately needed for the Grizzlies. So like, I don't hate the idea of like trading for a Kuzma. I again think it's super unlikely. Like if you could keep Marcus Smart and match the salary. But here's the problem I come to. I've started messaging other podcasters and writers for other teams who the Grizzlies might engage in a trade. And I think as Grizzlies fans, we always use Luke Kennard as matching salary. No one wants Luke Kennard. Guys, no one wants Luke Kennard. Like, I'm like, listen, I know you're just trading for the matching salary. We're attaching an extra first round pick. So you'll take Luke Kennard. And they're like, no one wants him, which also makes me think like, there's no way Luke Kennard's option gets picked up. I mean, maybe so, but my personal fears of the Grizzlies not being willing to pay much luxury tax, I feel like it's super unlikely. And the fact that this matching salary, theoretical matching salary, no one really wants to do it. If like the guys running blogs who are normally, let's be honest, more willing to float trades. They're like, oh yeah, I'll trade so-and-so for this salary. If they're all like, nah, I don't want Luke Kennard's salary, that makes me feel like, all right, well, I think there's a good chance we don't pick that up. And we don't make a trade for it.
Well, that brings up the question, though. So then what are the valuable contracts out there that would trade? And I get it. The Grizzlies, Luke Kennard probably means more to the Grizzlies than just about any roster in the league. Do you decline his option, extend him 3 years, $30 million? Sure. And he has another really good season. Maybe you use him as a trade piece in the future, what have you. But if he's not generating the interest that you need with his $15 million expiring option, then what becomes it? Obviously Marcus Smart is there. Does a combination of Zaire and Santi, become, attractive for, a lot or a team that's rebuilding? That may be the way to go to get to, that Luke number. So the one thing that I definitely could say is this: asset wise, the Grizzlies have picks. They have a sweetener if they need to really want to go after a guy in Vince or Gigi to use. So I would not use either of them in most scenarios, in my opinion. But in terms of those attractive, $6 to $15 million contracts per year type players, it's pretty barren.
Yeah,
there's a lot of attractive pieces.
Yeah. Let's come back. Let's take a break, and I'm going to come back and just go through a few more of the prospects. I want to narrow down on your draft prospects. We'll do that right after this quick break. Underdog Fantasy is a unique way to play fantasy sports for cash. You can do daily fantasy tournaments. You can play best ball. You can do highers or lowers. I've been using Underdog Fantasy for over a year. I use it mainly for the NBA and NFL, but they have every single sport. And now, if you sign up for Underdog Fantasy using my promo code FBBF, Underdog will match your opening deposit up to $250. Again, that's promo code FBBF, as in Fast Break Breakfast. So if you want to give Underdog Fantasy a try, use that promo code or click the link in this episode's description. Yeah, so we finished up talking about the Grizzlies draft assets or the trade assets, like the contracts. I think the interesting contracts, Marcus Smart has value. I think Santi Aldama he's expiring though, but he might be someone that another team could be like, okay, I'm interested. The Gigi Jackson and Vince Williams Jr., the idea of trading them, it seems, I don't know, anathema. It seems horrifying, but like, let's be real. There's a good chance they could be at their peak value ever of their career right now, coming off tantalizing, like breakout years. So like if you want to make a big trade, like those are your real chips. Maybe Laravia showed enough, in garbage time of the season that like someone might value that. Yeah, beyond that, it's pretty barren. But Shawn, let's go through. You gave me the names earlier. Donovan Clingan, Ron Holland, Reed Sheppard, Dalton Connect. Is that that's like your top 4 for who you would take?
Yeah, I would
if they're available.
I would. Those are the guys that I'm looking at right now. I do like Stephon Castle, but he seems to certainly be someone who very much is wanting to put emphasis on what he can do with the ball in his hands. That's just not something that's going to be available for the Grizzlies, though I do like his upside. Nikola Topic, again, someone who could do well with the ball in his hands, but is he someone that's more of a backup point guard type ceiling with the Grizzlies? So those guys, if they wanted to take them just for their upside, I wouldn't necessarily bat an eye at it. But those 4 that I mentioned, I think are the most sensible. These guys could be available at the pick type guys. I would put Ricochet, if he were to fall, I would definitely have interest in him, but I don't think he does. But those 4 guys I mentioned, I think make the most win now or high upside sense in the way that the Grizzlies typically like prospects.
I really struggle with this whole class of everyone I start looking at where I'm like, I don't see how that person's going to help next year. But I mean, granted, this is an extreme weakness of mine of looking at draft prospects. Not just that I don't do it very much. I don't watch college, but like then when I start actually watching, breakdowns of their game, I'm like, oh my Lord. Like, I don't think that player is that player's not going to help in the next 2 years. The one thing for like Reed Sheppard, something to Reed Sheppard, and all his tape is beautiful because he made shots. And so like the one thing that like sticks in my mind about Reed Sheppard, and I like want to look it up, is try to find out, like, is there a situation of just a guy playing out of his mind for a year? Like the idea that this guy was not a high draft pick, he does not have like the athletic measurables. I mean, I know he had a big vert, but like whatever. And then you see him have this season where he was just on fire the whole year, and I'm like, is that true? Like, I don't know. Like, what if that was just the random college year? Also, of course, Calipari playing him off the bench. I'm like, this is that weirds me out. And maybe you just blame Calipari for being a weirdo, having Dillingham and Reed Sheppard coming off the bench like that. And then his position being like a smaller guard. I'm like, it feels hard. What if I just traded for, I don't know, random NBA? What if like I got Dorian Finney-Smith instead? Not that you would trade the 9th pick for Dorian Finney-Smith, but still watching like, how's this guy going to be better than this guy? And so I don't know. It slows me down a lot. What are your thoughts on the idea of a player just being amazingly good at shooting one year and then it go like the Brady Anderson of college seasons? He hit 50 home runs once, never did it again. I'm not saying Reed Sheppard is doping.
I think what you bring up though is it's kind of the net of value that they could offer, right?
Yeah.
Like with Reed Sheppard and the Grizzlies, where does he add significant value? It would be him kind of being lightning in a bottle, kind of like Indiana got with TJ McConnell or New York got with Dante DiVincenzo this playoff run. You would hope for multiple type of performances like that with Reed Sheppard. Sure, he could provide it, but is he going to be able to provide that for 30 minutes a night in the lineup for the Grizzlies? Probably not. It's going to have to be just elite efficiency for 15 minutes a night in the playoffs. Is that something you want to spend the 9th pick on? It's hard to see happening. I think that he probably has more of that opportunity with a team that has a big guard. Dorian Finney-Smith, for instance, like you mentioned, he may not have that lightning in the bottle type efficiency or elite play, but he certainly could add value for longer in the game. So I think that that's kind of where you are. So, I believe in skill over size. I certainly do.
Mm-hmm.
But, someone like Reed Sheppard, I think it makes sense. You just take him and make it work if he's there at the 9th pick and you don't have a trade. But again, when it comes to those, we've got to play our best players in the best moments. Is Reed Sheppard going to be one of those 5 guys? With the way the Grizzlies are constructed, probably not. So for him to really add that significant value you want out of this 9th pick, it's going to have to be that elite play for 15 to 20 minutes. Again, that's a very narrow, pathway to him being, an incredible home run for the 9th pick with the ways that the Grizzlies are constructed.
So a lot of these guys we mentioned, I mean, Clingan, Reed Sheppard, Topic, maybe Ron Holland, like those guys could be off the board, or there's a good chance most of those guys are off the board when the Grizzlies pick at 9th. You mentioned Dalton Connect. Why do you like Dalton Connect more than like, I don't know, Matas Buzelis or like more than Cody Williams, Jacoby Walter, those guys. Is it because you're decked head to toe right now in UT Vols orange?
That may be it. But to me, it becomes the question of, do those guys that we mentioned have the same level of offensive value when they're 23 that Connect does right now?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that is a very hard question to answer with confidence. The thing that I think that's kind of not mentioned so much about this draft class is that, overall, the overall ceiling of these players is pretty low at the top. But you've got a lot of these players, Keith, who also are more defensive-minded players than they are offensive players. Holland, Stephon Castle, Donovan Clingan, Reed Shepard's defense, Cody Williams. They got good defensive potential, but they got plenty of questions about their, offense. The Grizzlies need offense. And to me, that stands out. Clingan, the reason why I like him so much is because I think his screening, rebounding, and other things that he does passing could elevate the offense for other players for the Grizzlies. That's why I like him. But to me, the reason why I like Dalton Connect is because I don't think he's just a three-point shooter. He can do some stuff off the dribble. He can do some stuff getting to the rim, moving off of initial actions, being able to shoot in the mid-court. He could play a bit of defense. It won't be any positive thing for a long period of time. But with Connect, it's just, to me, he's someone that adds shooting depth. And again, as we said at the start of the show, what stands out about these teams over the past few years that are in the conference finals and finals, it's elite shooting depth. I think Connect is someone that definitely offers that, and it's a big need for the Grizzlies.
Yeah, he's older than Zaire and Jake LaRavia. So not a problem.
No.
He's almost the same age as Santi Aldama. Santi looks like a couple months older. Yeah, I mean, he does, I guess, project to be polished offense that maybe can come step right in and lift the Grizzlies there. Yeah, I keep thinking when I look at these guys, it makes me, one, I mean, I've already said it, lean into trading for an established NBA player, but also your idea of trading back. If you can pick up the 18th or the 20th or 25th pick, because so many of these guys, and even like the centers, like I'm like, where is this guy? Like Yves Missy. I mean, he might go high, apparently. I'm looking at some other draft boards and people have him in the top 10. So that guy's a shot blocker, seems incredible. I initially was pretty high on Ron Holland, but now after watching more of him, I'm like, oh, the offense is just so horrific. And then I don't know, again, think about the trade backs, like the Khalil Ware. Is that a Superman name, Shawn? I feel like you would know. I mean, do we say Kal-El? If we say Kal-El, that's Superman name, right?
Yeah. Kal-El is Superman, but it's close enough. Yes.
It seems like a Superman name, so that means we're in, right?
And if you were to get a consistent motor in Ware, he would be that would be there for me, but I think it's something that has to develop. But like I say, I mentioned Tristan Da Silva, again, kind of like a Dalton Connect. He's that guy who is a really good spot-up shooting option, bigger guy who could play the 4 in some Jaren lineups potentially, but he does other things. Like, he's not someone that's going to sit here and be an elite offensive player, but he knows what he's doing off ball, which I think is a quality the Grizzlies are going to really value in these players. But when he gets the ball in place, it's not just about shooting. He can attack closeouts. He can make the right pass, play a bit of defense. He's a smart, heady overall player. So Tristan Da Silva comes up as an older prospect, but one that I think definitely falls in line with what the Grizzlies value in terms of their prospect priorities.
And what are your thoughts on Edey? A lot of people seem to be fired up about the Grizzlies getting Zach Edey.
Yeah, to me, Edey is someone, if they just absolutely feel that they can work with him, trade back to get him. I don't necessarily like the idea of getting him at 9. I'm not against Zach Edey as being a draft pick, but the question that I consistently ask, if he doesn't have the superstar level of usage and he's not getting the superstar calls, where does he effectively help out your best players if you're going to try to play him in those high leverage playoff type moments? I think he can do a lot of good off the bench. I think he can absolutely be a valuable rotation big off the bench. But yeah, I think he can screen. I think that he can rebound. But do I necessarily think that he's as good of a defender as like a Clingan or someone else? I don't think so. Do I think he stretches the floor like a Kyle Filipowski does? I don't think so. I think with Edey, you look at him and you think the Grizzlies need offense. He adds offense. That's perfectly fine. But is he going to be able to do that in a valuable way with much lower usage? We'll see. But I don't mind them necessarily getting him if they were to go back in the 20s. But I wouldn't necessarily, if they were to go get Denny Avdia, if that were to work out somehow, they get 25 and then they use that to get Edey, you're not going to get any qualms with me, but I wouldn't pick him at 9.
If sorry, I didn't mean to laugh, Shawn. If they get Denny Avdia and Zach Edey, that would work for you. Very generous, Shawn.
Well, I'm just saying that would be a good offseason to me.
It would be a good offseason. So what? So last thing. For me, a good offseason is defined by getting a starter level player, a guy who maybe he's not a starter, but like in a pinch can start. Like right now, of course, the Grizzlies are very, very well set up with Ja and Dez and Jaren, and then Marcus Smart, and then a healthy Brandon Clark, and then Vince Williams Jr. and G.G. Jackson. For me, those are 7 guys where I'm like, oh yeah, that's a heck of a team. But it's got some holes. Beyond that, it's like, I hope Santi hits, but like we might be done with the Santi Aldama experiment and like whatever. The rest of the roster to me, it's like we got to find another guy at the bare minimum at that level. Hopefully, someone even better. My big worry is, and I don't know if this is grounded in truth, but my worry is we're going to do another year of actually kind of decreasing the number of playable players. And that's a problem for me. So like my definition of a successful summer is getting a starter level player. And I don't know if they will. I think they might use the 9th pick and then that might be it. And I'm like, I don't know if that's going to work. So what's your, first of all right, so 2-part. Am I correct in having maybe some pessimism that they're not actually going to get me a starter level NBA player? And then 2, what's your definition of a successful summer outside of acquiring Denny Avdia?
My definition of a successful summer is adding another significant 3-4 big wing plus a significant, traditional center. I talk about, my home run summer would be Donovan Clingan and Denny Avdia. That's probably unlikely to happen. But if you add some version of that, have one of those two already be NBA player. So if you go get, for instance, a Jared Allen, I had talked about, then maybe you trying to get that 20th pick to get Tristan Da Silva. My whole thing is optionality at the end of the day. You've got that center who you could play with Jaren, take some load off of him during the regular season, because in my opinion, I think at the end of the day, our best lineup in playoff situations is likely Jaren at the 5. So I probably would actually go the route of trying to, my biggest move would be going to see what I could do to get that 3 or 4, like a Mikal Bridges, Denny Avdia, what have you. But those are very, very
Andrew
hard.
Wiggins.
And your suggestion, Andrew Wiggins, I think would be a good way to look at things. But those, it's very hard to find that type of player. It's a bit easier to probably find a significant center. But do you go with 2 bigs as being your, go-to playoff lineup? That's going to be hard to do against a really good jump shooting team. But in my opinion, I think that you at least get the talents here and figure it out. Use the 9th pick to add some size, get a rookie in there that's either the 5 or that big wing, and then what position you don't fill with the rookie, go get an established NBA player to fill the other one. But we need to add size. I think we need to add some efficiency on both ends of the court. And to me, if you can add shooting, that's great as well. But a significant big wing and at least a rotational 5 that can do the things we need for them to do: rebound, block shots, and screen. That would be a successful summer to me.
It sounded great to me. So to recap, I want to make sure I understood you correctly. You want a playable big and another starting level player. Was that accurate?
Yes. Now, and when I say a playable big, I'm not necessarily saying that they've got to be playing 20 minutes every playoff round, but someone that can at least, be serviceable for 20 to 25 minutes during the regular season.
Okay, Shawn, I'm going to get you right now to pledge to what I'm calling the goalposts challenge.
All right.
When the Grizzlies do not acquire both of those things this summer, I can't have you praising their offseason. All right? You accept the goalpost challenge? You accept the goalpost challenge?
I can't do it.
I feel like you were that's a high bar. I was just like, I want one playable guy. We have to have one more playable guy. You're like, I want a center and another guy. I love it. I like the optimism. Okay. You do not commit. Cause I feel like I have non-online Grizzlies fans, like I'd call them my regular friends, my real life friends who are basically not online. They are perplexed about the goalpost moving that happens every year with the Grizzlies. Where it's like, wait, why are we so excited about these players? We already had those players. They're like, oh, well, we have jamorant and Desmond Bane, and we had whoever. It's like, yeah, we've had those guys for years. I want more. And every year it's like, no, we got rid of those guys, but hey, we got this guy. It's like, well, I already had those guys. So I don't know.
I think that I'll simplify it a bit more like this. For me,
Yeah.
a successful offseason for the Grizzlies, if your goal, if you're not going to trade Marcus Smart and your goal is your five that you want to go to in closing lineups, high leverage playoff games, if that's Ja, Bain, Smart, and Jaren Jackson Jr., find that four that fits him the best. That to me is the number one focus of the offseason for me, because I think that is probably going to have a higher ceiling than maybe a Jaren Allen lineup with Jaren Jackson Jr. I'll take Jared Allen all day long. I think he's a phenomenal player. But at the end of the day, if the Grizzlies are wanting to see what they've got with Marcus Smart, make sure you support it by going to get that four that could really complement Jaren. Kyle Kuzma is somebody that could do that. I don't know how they do that without trading to Marcus Smart. That's why I love Denny Advia, because I think that he's a good fit with Jaren. But figure out how to find that four that could fit with Jaren and those other three guys. And to me, that's an offseason. And that's that starter level player in the best lineup that we could throw out there.
Can that Des, Marcus 1 through 3, can that guard the Celtics or the Mavericks or the Wolves?
It can try. Probably not.
All right. I've kept you too long. Thank you, Shawn. Always a pleasure talking Grizzlies with you. You're one of the best and brightest covering the Grizzlies. So thanks as always.
Yep. It's hard to be negative for me, but I haven't lost faith.
You're just a ray of sunshine. So you can't help it. Anyways, thanks everybody for listening. Talk to you next time. Go Grizz.
Go Grizz.